Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the workshop for the Planning Commission. The workshop is to discuss the resolution number 2020-43. I'll call the meeting to order. The first order of business, there's two things I'd like to do before we go into the discussion. One of which Dr. O'Brien, who's a member of the Growth Task Force, is going to speak to us concerning just the survey question about Harrison Leishear. So Doc, whenever you're ready.
Okay, do you want me to read the question? I assume everyone's seen the question. You just want the raw data.
No, for the record, read the question, please.
Okay, the question on the survey is question number 22, and it states, this question is about the Harrison Leishear property. Note the acreage and sizes are approximate. Carroll County has been in discussions with the town regarding the disposition and use of the Harrison Leishear property. This is an approximately 250-acre parcel of land located on the north side of town between Watersville and Leishear Roads on Route 27, extending the northern border of the town of Mount Airy. Current thoughts are to annex into the Mount Airy approximately 240 acres of this land. It is expected to be divided up in the following way: 120 acres of industrial land, approximately 80 acres of parkland, with approximately the remaining 40 acres to the north remaining undeveloped at this time. Nothing would occur without public hearings and citizen input. The following are some pros and cons of development. Starting with the cons, any development has added traffic as it replaces farm fields with partial development. Potential considerable costs such as adequate public facilities, streets, roads, water, sewer, mowing, plowing, policing, EMS, and associated other support services. Note that the development cost of the industrial land would come from the county, and the pros of the question would be as follows. The county would most likely develop with their funds, with or without the town, if we annex. If we annex, we have much more control over its design and use. A portion of the land will bring a small business industrial park with potential jobs and property tax revenue. We potentially gain 80 acres of parkland where field usages can be combined. To put this in perspective, Watkins Park is 20 acres in size. The certified high production well on the property would add a large water source to our inventory that would allow us more redundancy and flexibility for the future. With that background, please select the choice below that may best represent your opinion at this time. A, I do not know enough to comment. I look forward to the public hearings should this move forward. B, I would like to bring this into town with the pros as noted. C, I'd prefer this to develop under county control. D, I'd prefer the property to remain as is and do not believe it will develop in the county. So I'm going to give you the raw answers, the raw data. This data has not been analyzed. This is just raw data. And I'll start with the first question that was or the responses to the first choices. A, which would be, I do not know enough to comment. I look forward to the public hearings should this move forward. That would amount to 26.8%. Second question, second choice I would bring this into town with the pros as needed. and that represented 51.86% of the responses. Thirdly, or C, I'd prefer this to develop under county control. That represented 6.39%. And D, I'd prefer the property to remain as is and do not believe it will develop in the county. And that represented 15.56%. So no analysis has been done on any of this data. We're starting to do that. And that's the raw data.
Hey,
Okay, thank
Dr.
you.
Brian, I have a, can I ask a question real quick, Roxanne?
Absolutely.
Who were these surveys only given to town people who are in the town or anybody who lives in the the 21771 zip code? So was it all
Only-
in the area or just town residents?
Only town residents and people that vote for town elections.
And people who vote for town elections, is that people
Yes.
outside of the town?
No, town election for town offices.
Only in the corporate limits.
It's only the corporate limits.
Got it. Okay.
Hey, Dick, can I ask one question as well? Can you repeat the first two categories? Because it sounded like they were the same. I just want to understand both of those categories first.
Both categories.
Well,
Are you
the
asking?
26.8 and the 58.1. What were those? They were both, I think, bringing in the town, one with or without.
26.18, I do not know enough to comment. I would
Okay.
look forward to the public hearing should this move forward.
Okay.
And the up to 51%, 51.86% said, I would like to bring this into the town with the pros as noted.
Okay. Thank you.
How many total votes or how many total responses did you have?
To this
overall
question, there was
question?
1,000. To this question, there was 1,799.
Okay.
What is the total response rate based on the survey?
I don't know that. I'll give you a range because I'm not sure of the exact number. Again, we were just trying to get the results of this question for you guys. I think it was around 22%.
22% of all.
Response.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
A response rate for the whole survey.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Now, there's one other thing. Carl, you're on the call, correct? Carl, are you here?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Hold on, I was writing notes. Hold on.
Okay.
All right.
So on October,
Dick, you
the
can, I was going to tell Dr. Brian, he can log off of the meeting if he wants to. It's in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. It's up to you, where you can stay on.
Roxanne, it's difficult to hear
I'll
you.
try.
It's difficult to hear me.
Yes. It's
Is this better?
It's muffled and low. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Okay. How about this?
I think it's your headphone mic right here.
Okay, hold on.
And Bill, you're really hard to hear as well.
Yeah, Bill,
Okay.
Bill, you were low.
Is that better?
Okay, I'm using computer audio, but okay, I'll speak up.
Can you hear me better now?
It's okay.
My microphone's probably wearing out.
I know Leslie, she'll hold it up to her mouth usually,
Yeah.
right, when you're talking.
Okay. All right. Now, on October the 6th, there was a meeting held with Councilman Leishear, two representatives of the IDA, that was Isaac Minaj, Frank Jertzball, Carl, two members of council, Larry Leishear and Carl Munder, and two other county employees, and I can't remember their names. Do you have them there, Carl?
Yes, Roxanne, I do. Mayor Pat was also there
Okay.
for the town too. The other two county was employees were Jack Lyburn with the economic development arm of the county, and then Roberta Wyndham, who is the county administrator.
Okay. I asked Carl to come onto the meeting to speak to this meeting. There were notes taken. Larry sent me the email, but I wanted Carl to speak to what you discussed and what the answers were by IDA about the things that you discussed.
I had no problem. The meeting was organized by County Commissioner Boucher to get everyone in the room to see if the concerns that have been voiced to this point can be worked out with the county. So there were several items or the concerns that were discussed to this point. The access to the park will be off of Route 27. The IDA indicated that it will be off of State Highway 27, probably off of Leishear Road. We can request or ask about having another individual access point off of 27 to the State Highway Commission, but it is their call on the road, on the access point. So we can ask the State Highway Administration and see what they say on that one. So that's beyond the county and the town control for that one. The question of a site plan. We may be, all the elected officials and some of the county employees there would like to see a rough site plan. When I say rough, there's no engineered drawings, no engineering studies or elevations. This is just where they think the stormwater management facilities, the power lines, future development, and the park would be. So we may be getting something to look at, but that's a rough drawing, and it's not guaranteed that's how it will end up to that. Various planning site bufferings were discussed by the mayor, particularly berms, but that's more of a site plan. The issue of water was discussed, and we are trying to come to some form of agreement between the county and the town on covering potential well problems for neighboring residents. That was left in the hands of Isaac and our town attorney, Tom McCarron, to get together and discuss the legalese of it. So we're waiting to hear back from that. That was pretty much it for the notes here.
The one thing that I thought was interesting, sorry, I've got to get my
No problem. Sometimes I answer questions better than speaking it out too, Roxanne. So
okay. It was discussed about okay, so the impact fees were associated with the connections, and Isaac asked if those impact fees could be split 50-50. And that's something that we will have to, we don't get into that, but the thing that I did think that was interesting was that the IDA and the county's response to if this failed, if this annexation failed, or was not passed by the council or a referendum, all county staff, IDA and the commissioners firmly stated that the development would occur. The land would not remain a cornfield, though it may take more time. They also stated, depending on the commissioner's response, everything is on the table, from high density residential to a large single box distribution center. It was also kind of hinted that, of course, if the annexation fails, the parkland parcel might be peeled off and sold to a new developer owner. But I wanted to make everybody aware of that as well. Does anyone have any questions for Carl, Bill?
Well, it's not a question for Carl. One of the things I asked John for, and he produced was the ability to look side by side at our OPE ordinance and specifications right up against the employment campus that the county has developed. And there's a world of difference between them. As our planning commission members are aware, one of the ultimatums we gave ourselves, along with finalizing the update of the master plan, was we realized we had unfinished business in terms of finalizing both an OPE ordinance and an MXD ordinance. And we specifically took 2, 3, 4 years to do that and to tailor them very specific to concerns, needs, restrictions, and focus that we had, and an extension of our master plan vision. When you compare the OPE with the employment campus, you see it's much more focused. It's much more restrictive in terms of an employment campus. It has height limitations that are beneath what the county is talking about. It has less density. Bulk requirements are more reasonable. I could go, obviously there is no residential in it. It is designed in the best iteration that we could envision for a light industrial office park as a complement. The larger context of this, and I'll step outside a little bit, the express purpose of the Planning Commission, the long-term purpose of this is greater equity and healthy ratio between our industrial and commercial revenue versus our residential revenue. If you speak with MPL officials, what you'll hear is that they have a recommended percentage and ratio of industrial and commercial tax revenue versus residential. We're only about 2/3 of that in Mount Airy. That's a concern going forward. Not that we are planning tremendous development. We aren't. We love the size of our town. We just know that we are very limited in terms of the downtown area with existing commercial retail space there. That was part of the rationale to extend Center Street. We know the same is true in terms of additional industrial contribution. That's part of what Harrison Leishear would give us. So there's more water, there's more parkland, there's the opportunity for Mount Airy to control the development, the flavor, the tone of Harrison Leishear. And in the process, although it will take many, many years to create a much healthier balance of our tax revenue going forward. That'll take some of the stress off of the tax rate for residential. I'm sure, given our composition, that housing values will continue to rise, but this doesn't mean that they have to bear the brunt of increased taxation because of operating costs of the town. So there's a healthy benefit in that regard in terms of annexation and the town managing its own fate with regard to how that develops.
If I could just respond, I think, Bill, you bring up some good points, but I would question, we're keeping the flavor of a small town. When you're talking about that, in addition to the Beck property, you're talking about a significant change to what Mount Airy looks like, period, in my opinion. And I feel like we are being kind of blackmailed by the county and by IDA into doing this. If you're not going to do the annexation, we're going to make sure that we're going to put whatever we want there, and we're going to sell off this piece of property and everything else. And I feel really, I'm sure there are benefits, definitely the park, the fields and things like that we need, but I feel like we are being blackmailed. I feel like the change to what Mount Airy looks like is going to be significant with this and the Beck property. Between the two, it's not going to be what we look like right now. So
I am I
yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that that mixed use zone up, because I think it's kind of interesting. So the OPE, I believe, was passed in 2016 thereabouts.
Yeah.
And so it's 4 years later, and as we've discussed previously. This has been going on for 10 years. Mixed use, we just passed, I mean, council just passed, and I can't necessarily say it's ahead, but it seems to me that in a way, the IDA decided to futz around and, whatever it was, whatever this reason for all this delay. And now that there's really no need for office park, 10 plus years later, it's a really, odd time to be developing office park, that will, if it starts, will come about the same time as the mixed use. Let's say it's the Beck property, which we've always assumed it was. And obviously there's different uses, but MXD provides administrative and professional offices. I mean, it allows permitted uses, educational centers, medical and health services, hotels with or without conference centers, municipal government services, professional offices, again, public buildings and structures. These are just, there's other things obviously, but these are the things that are also permitted in OPE. So it just seems to me that the Beck property would be our priority for the reasons that Judy stated, and because it's a smart growth. I mean, it's already closer to town, and we know the infrastructure. All you have to do is open a road. It's not. There's all this concern about the wetlands and the wildlife, and Beck property. Yeah, there might be some, but it's a completely different type of a parcel. So I just don't see. It's like, so these folks, and I know some of the people who commented made a point of this, that they wait 10 plus years, and then in the middle of a pandemic, they decide that they're going to bring their application forward. I mean, it's just rather, I don't know, kind of shady. And I have more comments, but I'll wait. I'll just stop now.
Okay.
I think
Can I say something real quick? I get frustrated when I hear people mention the pandemic, because we are where we are today because council started working on this a year ago prior to the pandemic. So unfortunately, it is timing, but it isn't being pushed through because of a pandemic.
Nobody said push through, just says makes things more difficult for people.
The one thing, I think the concern that I have, and I don't know if Barney is on here. My concern is we don't have the water for the mixed use. Is that correct? Barney?
Water for the mixed use. The developer has mentioned that they have the water.
Well, we don't.
Until they submit something development wise, we don't know for sure. I mean, they haven't given us any information as where that is. Mm-hmm. We know they've done some testing on their property, but we don't have that information. But they do say they have their water. Okay.
The other thing is that this, and I'm just pointing out, I kind of am sitting on the fence myself, that this does give us parkland and takes us out of the deficit of parkland. If we don't have this, then, that kind of shuts down the development a little bit too. I guess you just have to look at both sides.
I think I'd feel a little bit different if it felt like it was in a collaboration. I feel like the IDA has come in from the time that I joined the the planning commission, sorry. It has been told to me, if you don't go along with this, we're going to develop it and you're not going to have a say. So this is what the county wants. This is how you're going to get the land, and this is the only way you're going to get it. And that was kind of the tone in which I was told about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. If we could negotiate something with the county, if we could be a partner with them instead of it being this or nothing, I guess, there's. Mm-hmm. Parkland would be great. I just think that in this time to build that much new development between the two properties, Beck and that is a lot. And it puts us in a tough spot because I don't know what they'll do either. And I don't know if we would be sitting here worrying about this right this very second, if it were not for the fact that they are pushing it and saying, if you don't take this and annex it in now, we're going to do something else with it. And I don't know if we'd be making that decision.
I think we need to take that threat seriously because, you know, some folks in the meeting, the last planning commission meeting, are under the impression that the county doesn't have the money to do what they want with it. And so it's like, oh, let's roll the dice and let's see, let's call their bluff and see if they'll actually do something with it. I don't think they can, they have the money for water treatment or, water facilities, and they won't build it because it'll be expensive. That is, I think, the worst reason not to do it that I could come up with. Because if you think the county doesn't have enough money to do that, then you ought to look at the budget. They can find the money if they want to do it. So I really hope that people aren't kerneling our decision to recommend annexation based on the fact that it's going to stay a farmland. It won't. It might stay a farmland for another year, 2, maybe 5, but it will become something. And I just don't understand why we wouldn't want control of that. If it's, we can make it something else with, it doesn't have to be a building with offices in it. It can be something else, but we can't control that if it's the counties.
Oh, I agree, but they said that it had to be the OPX. It had to be that type of development.
But
so
it offers us options, though. It offers us options. Whereas if they do it, it'll be a building with offices in it, and it will be no options. So I mean, we have options if we annex it and we get the water. The other thing that I think people are forgetting here is that you're bringing money from outside the town into the town. And I know that, the neighborhood doesn't see it this way, but every business that exists in Mount Airy sees it that way. They're wondering, when the money is going to flow in from the town. I mean, I eat lunch around town too, but I don't eat lunch every day around town. And people who, if they are working in that space, have to go eat somewhere, and they will. So, I mean, I don't know. There's so many facets to this, and there's a lot of benefit to it as well. I think we're losing control if we just wait for the county to do something with it. And I'm not saying it should be, Office Park right now is maybe not a great idea given the work from home. I never thought that I'd be working from home. I'm working from home, but by gosh, the county will make it an office park, and you'll have empty buildings. Not only we have a building blocking 27 and that neighborhood, but it'll be an empty building. So at least we fumble through this and kind of, figure out something in the meantime. But if we don't make it ours, we lose full control. And it doesn't bring money into the town. Don't forget the tax revenue. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with not annexing it. Go ahead,
Leslie.
Leslie.
So I have a couple just responses, and I have another observation. I mean, first of all, you're making assumptions that the buildings are going to be full. I mean, no matter whether we develop it or the county, that there's actually going to be people in the buildings, and there's going to be a tax base when we don't know that's going to happen because we're all working at home. And I don't think, and I agree, I don't think that we're assuming that if it's not annexed, that it's not going to be developed. But I think there are some interesting things. So the Carroll County Planning Commission meeting, Linda Eisenberg, the staff, the head of, what do you call her?
She's the director.
She's the director. The director of planning. When she started out the meeting, she mentioned that one of the reasons, and this was on parcel 20, one of the reasons that they thought it might be a good idea to change the zone from conservation to EC was because of Harrison Leishear being annexed in as OPE. So it's sort of the opposite in a sense of what John was saying a meeting or two ago. It's like they were looking at, oh, this is going to be OPE. So it would actually be a good idea to make that office park as opposed to like if they, if we don't annex it, anyway, I lost my train of thought, but regardless, so they had this presumption. And then in fact, every person who spoke on the commission was like, well, we thought Mount Airy wanted this. We see that they don't. And therefore we're voting unfavorable. We're making an unfavorable recommendation. Now, obviously we don't know what the commission's going to do. But going back to the property itself. Now, if this is what we have received is quite a detailed description and explanation of how this is all going to work. Now, if that can be changed, then we're talking about a whole different thing. So we can see if that can be changed. But the other part is if the county, if we don't annex it and the county wants to do something, then Scott says, well, they can just build some big old stupid building, but yet we're telling people there's no site plan yet. There's going to be a public hearing, all that stuff, whether it's in the town or the county has to also contend with its residents. And the fact is that every person who has commented about Harrison Leishear is a county resident and not a town resident.
Mhm.
So in fact, they have no representation. I mean, it's going to impact us too with the traffic and the other negative stuff and the positive stuff. But it's the people who are the most directly affected, who are, come right up to it, are county residents. And if the county is going to do this, then those people who are very organized can raise hell with the county, and they can tell the county what they want to see. Now, they tell us we don't care because they're not town residents. And none of the Mount Airy residents are, there's a few, but there's not going to be some, huge swell of, oh, we want you to do this and not that and whatever. So, I think it's interesting. It's a conundrum, but I don't really see that the county can, I'm not saying they won't develop it, but I don't think that they can do whatever they want because they have the same types of processes that they have to go through as we do.
Okay.
Bill?
All right, Leslie, I hear what you're saying. 2 points. Number one is what Doc O'Brien shared with us in terms of the response on the questions in terms of the Harrison Leishear property. There were twice as many folks who said, yes, I want to bring this parcel into the town with the understanding I have of the proposed development for it. When I look over the annexation agreement, when I look over the notes from the proposal that town attorney put together and we had a chance to look at our last meeting, I have the feeling that this is pretty much a win-win. The county is participating and they're willing to support a lot of the vision and the preferences that we have already stated that we were recommending for Harrison Leishear and for an OPE. I look at the breadth and depth of the understanding of the discussion, and I basically see us controlling the site plan. I see us controlling what the specifications are and how it's utilized and how it's filled up and the density of it and other limitations to it. Their employment campus, if you go through and you look at it, is much more lax. It's much more open, and it doesn't have nearly the focus. We have much more control in doing this ourselves in many ways.
Right, but we don't know that the county would put it in, the county would do it as employment campus. I do not think they would.
No, I mean,
think they
we
would
don't
do
have any
something else.
guarantee of that.
Right.
If
Well,
they're totally in
right.
control.
It's zoned residential.
Right, it is.
They would have to go through, this is what John brought up.
No, it's zoned.
They would have to go through their master planning process because there would be no reason for them to piecemeal zone that if the parcel 20 is not if the zoning is not changed in parcel 20. So you'd have conservation zoning, and then you would have residential zoning, and it's surrounded by residential and maybe ag zoning. So the county would have to wait until their master planning process. Now, as far as the towns are, and I'm just being devil's advocate. I mean, I can see both sides, but the survey, I took the survey, and I may have even picked number 2, because before we all saw these documents and heard a little bit more, got a little bit more information, that was the party line. Oh, it's going to be so much better if it's in the town because we can control it. But once we start kind of getting like this, like all these documents, and you look at the details, and then they want to do parcel 20 because of Harrison Leishear, and there's all this and then there's, of course, the survey was pre-COVID. I mean, so nobody knew that we weren't going to need an office park. So the survey to me is like not very useful at all. Yeah.
I mean, remember all the voices, while very important, and we definitely need to take it, all the voices came from within 100 yards of this employment campus. If you would have polled the people surrounding the Walmart parking lot, and their houses, they would have said, hell no, they'll never bring that thing in here. But you'd be hard pressed not to find a citizen of Mount Airy who has not walked into that Walmart. So I'm trying to look at this from the greater good of the town. I mean, it would be nice to have an employment, to have jobs in town. That would be good, right? Like to be able to have people.
What jobs are going to be there?
I don't know. I can't. I mean, I agree with you that an employment campus is very untimely, but COVID will pass, and the people will be going back to work to some degree. So we're all not going to be working from home in our pajamas for the rest of our lives. If that's your hopes and dreams, let me burst your bubble now. People will forget about this in 5 years. But I guess what I'm saying is that we need to look at the larger influx of influence for the town. And I agree. Like I don't know what to say about an employment campus being built in front of somebody's house. That is not great, but at the same time, that's a string of like 10 houses, and you have an entire town that you're feeding with that water supply, so, and that tax revenue. So very important to listen to the voices and to take it in, but there is a larger population that we have to consider too. And I give you the case of the Walmart, right? Like everybody thought that was going to be the death of the town, and it's now the lifeblood of the town. And I challenge you to change my mind on that.
No, that's a good point. And Roxanne, even pre-COVID, said we don't need an office park. She's the real estate guru, right? It's like nobody's using office parks. Now, Walmart, even though, nobody or most of us don't love it, but may go in occasionally, it's in the growth area of the town. Like it's not off in the woods there, or the farm. And it's not like, oh, you can never build on a farm, because we do have housing developments. But
that was a farm at one point.
Yeah. But when you have parcels that are closer to town, I mean, I guess my question is like, what's going to be developed first? Is it going to be the Beck property, or is it going to be, this thing here? And is there a way to prioritize? And also, can we change what it's going to be? What does Harrison Leishear, is this agreement carved in stone and we're just voting? I know we're not voting tonight, but are we just voting on the agreement, or can there be changes to it?
Tom, can you shed some light on the joint annexation agreement, and how flexible is it?
Well, I really can't answer that.
Okay.
It takes two to tango, so you could certainly propose some changes to it. The IDA would have to agree to it, or not go through with the annexation. My guess is that there are certain, it's just a guess, that there are certain areas that they might be willing to negotiate. And there are probably some basic terms that they aren't. An office park into a car lot, they're probably not into that. So, there are some probably some areas, again, I don't speak for the IDA, that could be tweaked, I'm sure. But, you know, how much of it, I just can't say.
I do know that the residents around it and the people that back up to it on Butler Road and the people on Jack's Court, which are directly across from it, are concerned about their water. And I think that in that meeting on the 6th, the IDA did mention that there could be some consideration for them. And I think that that's one thing. I know that they're not residents, but they are going to back up to this thing. And we could eventually have to, if their wells failed, we already have a precedence of someone outside of the town whose well failed, who the Maryland Department has requested that we put them online. So I think we need to have protections for them as well as for that will protect us as well. So I think we need to put I would like to see some wording in there about the protection of the wells of those people. Because we have gotten, we've heard many of them talk about that. The other thing
I've already spoken to IDA's counsel. He's called me last week's meeting to go over some proposals. Nothing's final, but where that's left, so you all will know, is that he's going to draft something up and send to us for review in that regard. So,
okay, that's good to know.
I think it's also probably reasonable for us to consider berming, maybe even expanding, or at least considering expansion of outside buffers where they are adjacent to a residential area outside of the town boundary. Those can all be tweaks if we feel like it enhances the presentation and the operation of the property and the basic design, then why not?
I also think, I mean, you guys are bringing up some really good points, and I'm trying to be balanced with my thought process. And I think that if, I know when we developed the office park standards or regulations or whatever, that we, IDA was part of that process. And I think that at the time, office park seemed like a reasonable thing to put there.
Years ago it did.
But I think now, I just wonder if they would be open to, as that being part of the negotiation of us annexing it in, is getting a little bit more flexibility on what could be put there. I know that that was something they were really invested in because of the tax base and the amount of taxes that they would collect as well. So I think I'd be more open, because something's going to be developed. Scott, you were right. Something's going to be developed there one way or another. We do it, they do it, somebody does it. I just think as a part of the planning commission, to be smart about what goes there. And I just don't think an office park is the thing, especially at this time. But so I would be interesting, Tom, to see if they would be open to that type of negotiation.
The other, thank you, Judy. The other thing we really do need to consider is the economic viability of the town. And I do think that having this in the town with the tax base, the business tax base, is going to help and boost our town economy as well. I'm like you, Leslie. I'm stuck on why this has to be an office park, because I'm seeing everywhere where the office parks are actually changing their philosophies, and a lot of them are changing into, they're finding that people need warehouse space now because they need larger spaces to gather because of the social distancing. I know, Scott, we're not going to have it forever, but it just, I wish there was, some flexibility within this, that, like you said, Judy.
Especially with the amount of vacant space that we already have right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much vacant office space and that we have throughout within the town limits to create more, especially if you're creating fresh new space. people who are currently renting existing space could fly to that. I don't know. And then we end up with more empty spots in town and things like that. So I just think that there's smart growth. There's smarter ways maybe to do that if they're open to that.
Judy,
Actually, go ahead.
no, I agree with you that an office park is not the best idea at this moment. But I mean, surely we would like to control that, though. I mean, if that's what scares me is that we're going to end up with whatever someone gives us when we have a chance to do this better than what is probably going to happen if we just throw it into someone else's hands. And I really believe that. I don't know, I don't know how it's going to sit with everybody that, we're maybe locked into some kind of specific zoning that's going to restrict us. But either way, we can at least control it. I mean, it's, if it's ours, we can change it maybe over time with negotiations. I mean, to something else. And besides, the current zoning or that zoning that would warrant the office park has many other opportunities than just an office building with people sitting in it working. I mean, we do have some other options, but we don't have options when someone else decides. I mean, that's it.
Roxanne, I have a comment.
Yes, Leslie.
Judy reminded me talking about the empty space in especially downtown is that, and again, I don't know if this is something that can be addressed, but some of that empty office space is because the rent is too high. So is that another, potentially if this actually were an office park, is what if they just have these really high rents, and then even if like in theory people are going back to work, nobody wants to rent it because the rents are too high. It's just, because I know that's a huge thing with downtown.
I know, and that's, unfortunately, we really can't control the rents. I mean, that's up to the owners of the property to do that. I mean, we can only suggest, if it's vacant for a long time, we can only suggest that they lower their rents. So I feel like we kind of have kind of all talked about how we feel, what we feel. I think we kind of need to, but we also are in agreement that something needs to be put in there as far as the wells and the waters are concerned to protect those people that are bordering Harrison Leishear. And I think we also agree that we would like to work together and try to help when the site plan comes in, I guess. Our vision is a little different, I think, now than it was when we made this OPE 7 year. How many years ago that we started it? I think it was almost 7 years ago that we started this. So
probably at least.
Yeah.
Lindy would know.
It's been about 7 years because that's when I first joined the.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
you
when
were
we started.
right. Okay. All right.
We finished it about, what, 2016 or so?
That's when it was added. Yeah, in 2016. So I think that's kind of where we need to go to kind of come together to see. I think we're kind of also in agreement that the buffers that we have maybe should be extended a little bit around the areas where the residents are. I think we're in agreement to that. And I just think we need to see the site plan when I know they're going to do a rough plan of kind of like where they want. I don't envision this as one big building. My vision is that there's going to be 2 or 3 different smaller buildings.
Who's going to be developing a site plan? Because I thought
the IDA, the developer is the IDA.
I have a question as well. I got the impression that there might be some consideration or at least further discussion, Tom, in terms of the location of the office park component, on the 126 acres versus the parkland and so forth. Is that still an open issue? Might there be consideration of changing the location of those two?
I was told by IDA's counsel is that they are consulting with their engineer about the prospects of that and how, feasible that would be. Here you'd be talking about, I gather, correct me if I'm wrong, swapping where the parkland is versus parcel A. In other words, above the
Yeah.
power lines. But that's my understanding of what the status of that is. So they're looking at it.
Okay.
All right.
So our job, I guess, or our purpose is that this has been given to us by town council, and all we need to do is to send a favorable or unfavorable recommendation back to them. I think we have come to the fact that there are things about this that we would like to see added to be more favorable. I don't know that we're ready for a vote the next meeting we come up. But I think we need to kind of look at the agreement and see where we feel that we need to have additions. And one thing, like you said, Tom, the council is putting in something about the water. I think that's very important.
Right, or potentially a separate memorandum of understanding.
Right.
That would include the residents over there as beneficiaries.
Is Barney still on the call?
Yes, he is. At least his name's up.
At least his name is. Barney, can you hear us?
Yep, there he comes.
There he is.
Yep, I'm here.
Barney, I've got 2 or 3 quick questions. Of the 4 wells or 4 potential sites for wells, only one has been explored in terms of capacity, well 18. Do you see
No,
any?
all 4 of them have been.
All 4 have been. Okay.
Yes.
The material we have reads only in terms of the capacity of well 18 at upwards of 200. I don't know if it's gallons per minute or gallons per day. It's stated both ways. Do we know the additional capacity of the other 3 wells?
So no, the capacity was tested as in fact, the appropriation would be just one appropriation for all 4 wells together.
Okay. All right.
And so it was tested for 200,000 gallons a day.
Okay. Second question is, if we did not move forward with this, if we gave up the opportunity and left it to the county to do as they might choose to do with Harrison Leishear, and we got no water out of it at all, okay, where do we stand with the ability to move forward or do some of Center Street and the Beck property MXD?
So right now we have, I don't know if you remember the last allocation that we had done was a total of 80,000. Of that, we've taken out Brittany Manor and some other things. We're down to about 53,000 gallons a day, and about, if I remember correctly, roughly 30,000 gallons a day is allocated for the category for priority use, which is category 1. And so 30,000 gallons, that's the equivalent of about 120 homes, or the equivalent in commercial.
Okay, so some portion, but let's say a modest part of what
Very
we might
small
do.
portion.
Okay.
But for the Beck property, they said they had their own water.
Well, it's,
They say that. But,
say that.
okay. The other question is in terms of wastewater treatment plant capacity, because one of the things we've heard off and on for years is that we were approaching capacity of our current wastewater treatment plant. And to dramatically expand that, we couldn't do it in the current zone it's in. We would essentially have to build additional capacity in another location, in another watershed.
So right now, as far as our sewer capacity at our waste treatment plant, we have enough capacity for all infill development and that Harrison Leishear. But that
Okay, we do.
that if we build everything out that's in town and the Harrison Leishear, then we would be approaching the capacity.
Okay, that's
Does
better
does
than I
that
realized
include,
we were.
does that include Beck property?
Yeah.
Mm-mm, no,
That does include Beck property.
It
And
does
Beck,
include
you have to
Beck
understand Beck property, it does. You have to understand that Beck property is probably at least half of our infill development.
Okay, okay.
So,
So it's
they're a
included when
big
you
chunk.
say infill. Okay,
They are a big chunk of it. Yep.
All right. So that's really, wastewater treatment is not an issue then, in terms of either of them.
Correct, up to that point. Beyond that, it will be an issue.
Okay.
But yep.
Let's understand too that there's an element of APFO and open space, that no residential development would be able to move forward until we were adequate, right? So the parkland that we're getting from this annexation would actually bring us, I think, to even, if not even a positive, right, Barney? Is that correct? Pretty sure.
It would about break even.
Right.
And then any development beyond that, like the Becks, they would still have to provide their share, their proportionate share.
Correct.
Okay.
but that's
The
calculated.
other legal, sorry. The other legal impediment to draw water out of Beck, remember, is the recharge. We do not have the recharge, I don't believe, to permit withdrawal, so we'd have to find some other recharge.
That's right. And that's one of the advantages of what the county is proposing. They would transfer their recharge credits and take care of that for Harrison Leishear.
True.
Yeah,
For
Harrison Leishear. Yeah, as far as recharge, Harrison Leishear and the Beck property are two different aquifers. So we do have the land recharge for some growth, some extra well use. I don't know if it would cover everything in the Beck property, what they need, but we do have some there. And then, like you said, Harrison Leishear would the county would provide that extra land.
So it's interesting. So I was looking at the agreement, and they specifically say in here several times that we have to, as doing this, we were proposing that the OPZ zoning would be on the property. And it doesn't say where on the property though. And so to Bill's point of if we could switch, and it sounds like they're at least looking at that viability, if they annexed that if we annexed it in, we could be in control of where the OPE part goes and where everything goes, can't we?
Possibly.
The agreements right now, as they're drafted, to include the resolution, do set out where the OPE would be.
Okay, I didn't
Below
see
the
it.
lines and also on parcel A.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
because there's like 3 agreements.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't, so if our task is to make a recommendation to town council, can we say that, like personally, my vote right now would be to say, yeah, we should probably annex it, but I would want to change some of the language in the agreement. And so I guess that would be saying, no, we don't agree with it, but it's not in entirety. It's just there's language in the agreement that I don't agree with.
Yeah, you could say, I don't recommend this, but if you're going to do it, here are the provisions that I would recommend be changed. So,
Right, because right now we're recommending on the way it's been presented to us.
Right.
Is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
yes. Folks, I've got another meeting. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Well, that's
It's
okay,
Thanks so
Tom.
much,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Appreciate you
All right.
being on board for a
Thank
while.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See
Thank
you
you for
later.
attending.
So the next part, I think, is for us to consider. I wanted to, before he left, I wanted to make sure. Okay, so I want to back up about the timing and how much time we have. So
Mhm.
we're still under the old ordinance that states that our clock started at the town council meeting where they handed it to us, which was the, so our first meeting where we started talking about Harrison Leishear was actually 30 days into the 120. We've had 2 meetings, so we're 60 days in.
Plus whatever, 60, 70.
Right. Well, so I'm just breaking it down. I'm just saying month to month, it's 30 days, just give or take 1 or 2 days. So at the next council meeting, which will be November, the 1st of November, the first Monday in November, they will be voting on the ordinance to change the time when our clock actually starts, so that they want our clock to start at the meeting that we start talking about it.
Right.
So luckily, that ordinance, if it is passed, is retroactive. So we would still be sitting. So our first, if we go to the new ordinance, we're sitting at 60 days at our next meeting.
Roxanne, is it worth just asking for that extension just to be safe?
I think, well, that's where I'm going with this. I'm going to ask the
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we go ahead and ask for an
I think we
extension
should
at town
ask for the
council level.
extension.
Right. I think that's the smartest move.
Is everybody in agreement with that? So at
Yep.
the next council meeting, I will ask for an extension.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think we each start to make a list of, concerns and proposals, for modification.
I think we've kind of, I think we've kind of,
A partial list now.
yeah, I think we've kind of listed all of our concerns. I think we need now to come together to see if you wanted this to be favorable, if you wanted to send this to town council with a favorable recommendation, what would you change in here? How would you, what portions would you change?
Do we have the ability to, I feel like we're just continually in response to the county instead of us. There's reasons that they want us to annex it into our town too. So this isn't just purely they're being kind. So I feel like we do probably have some level of negotiation. So they're going to go ahead and do an evaluation of whether or not they can switch sites from where the fields will be versus where the OPE will be. Can we do the same thing? Can we go ahead and say we want to send our folks up to evaluate the land and do some site appraisal to see if we can do that versus waiting just for them to tell us what they find?
Well, I think we can suggest where we want to have it. It's up to them to go back and make the engineering. I don't think we need to go up there and send the up there to determine the changes. I think we know where the changes are. We want them.
Except that the agreement, from the perspective of, if I'm looking at negotiating a piece of land that I want to purchase, I'm not going to just take the seller's point of view. I'm going to go ahead and do my own research too, I guess is what I'm thinking. And so this is kind of like purchasing a property. We're taking it on, and if they come back, because the agreement states where the office park will be. If they say, yep, we can't do it any other way, that's what goes into that agreement, and we don't have a say after that. There is no negotiation once that agreement's signed. And I guess I'm just thinking, if we have the time, especially if we're asking for an extension, do we have the ability to go ahead and do some of our own research so that we have information as well of what can work and not work? So when they say it won't work, it might not work exactly as they want it, but if we tweak it and kind of do it together, it might work. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So Barney is.
That would have to come from the town council to, establish a fund or money to put towards that. I mean, engineering cost or design costs or enormous. I mean, that could cost $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to do.
But they're not spending that kind of money on that.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. You have to look at soil types. You have to look at, there's a lot of things that play into it. It isn't just like sketching it out on a piece of paper.
Right.
Right. But I mean, that would have to come down from the town council to say, hey, we'll give you the 20 grand to have a feasibility study for this site. I mean, that's my thought, but Barney, you chime
Barney,
in. And...
can you chime in, please?
Sure. I mean, certainly we could go out and take a look and look at the area and see what would make sense to us without the engineering, without doing the geo study and that sort of thing like John's mentioning. We can make suggestions and say, hey, how about if you consider, you know, making these changes? You know, maybe you take this area and leave this area alone to the town. You know, we can certainly make suggestions for them to look at. But if you want an in-depth study, then that'll cost some money. I mean, I don't know how much, but.
So here's another possibility. If we're going to take a step to give ourselves a little bit more time to make the very best recommendations, most responsible recommendations we can to council, maybe either on our own or in combination with the county planning department, maybe we have some open discussion, given the unknowns of COVID and how long it's going to last and the current impact on commercial and office park and all the rest, what other tweaks in the design of what we allow and maybe amend our OPE ordinance accordingly. Why don't we have some consideration or due diligence on that?
I think that and we probably should. I think that requires us to have a meeting with the IDA and to go over some of these things that we're considering. A workshop, a combined workshop with the IDA and possibly the town council. I mean, I think this is important enough that we need to get everybody on the same page before we decide what we're going to do. Because we can keep going back and forth with this for quite a while.
There's so many unknowns now. I think we need to try to reduce them if possible, or get some additional clarification.
Judy, I see the wheels spinning.
God. I definitely think a conversation. I mean, I do think that Frank has been, you know, very active and involved with us, and I don't feel like he's been anything but upfront with where they stand, and I've appreciated working with him. I do just think that I feel like I just take the word of everybody instead of having my own information. So, you know, I do think that to sit down and have a conversation and be able to have Barney, I'm not an engineer, I have no idea, but for you to have looked at the property and be part of that meeting and say, when they say, well, we can't do it because of this, this, and this, we can't switch it. You can say, but have you thought about this? Because there might be some compromise, and it's not trying to throw anybody under the bus. It's just open communication and brainstorming and trying to make it all work. I absolutely, you know, Scott, you heard me in the beginning. I am, this is my backyard. So I definitely have a personal preference. My backyard looks right onto that property. So, yep, I have a little bit of angst about the whole thing. I do think you're right. To annex it in gives us the control. I do think the way the agreement's written takes away some of that control. And I think that there's ways that we could look at that and have additional conversation would be really, really helpful.
Okay.
To get it set up ahead of time.
So we can do that after our next council meeting, which would put us into November, sometime in November, that we would have that conversation with them.
Yeah. Barney, do you think you'll have a chance to look at that property before then? Is that too much to ask of you? I have no idea what's involved in that and what your time looks like.
I'll be honest with you. I've looked at the property many times. So
you've got some ideas going on?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. But I reserve a lot of those comments until I see a drawing. I need to see what their layout is to know what to comment on.
Okay, got it.
So without having that, that makes it a little difficult.
Do you think we should ask them to present they said they're trying to give us some sort of a rough site plan. Do you think we could ask them to present that rough site plan at the combined meeting that we have, so we have some idea of what they're thinking about?
I think that's fair.
I think it would be
Okay.
good to have it ahead of that meeting so you have time to look at it.
Okay.
Let's make the request at least.
I
Okay.
think we have, is my understanding. We've already, I mean, through that meeting with Tom and Carl and Larry, they've already made that request and they're working towards that. It's just we haven't seen it as town staff.
Okay.
And
Carl,
again, I mean,
Carl, did you give them a drop dead, a kind of a timeline as to when you'd like to see the rough draft?
No,
rough
not
site
really, because the meeting was only last week.
Okay.
So we didn't really give them a drop dead date on anything. We're kind of waiting to see how all this plays out too. But I would hope it would be sooner rather than later. They're aware that it's important for you all and us to make that decision on how everything is laid out. So,
and the IDA is in attendance tonight. Their secretary is in attendance, so he is hearing this from you.
Good.
So I'm sure he'll understand that there's a concern, and that we want to see the plan as soon as possible at the staff level, and also to be forwarded to you for your review.
So I would like to, if they could, at our next planning commission meeting, give us a time when that rough draft, when they would have that completed, so that we can then determine when we can sit down and go over that with them. Because I'd like to have this done, like Carl says, sooner than later. I don't want it to keep drawing out, but I think it's important that we kind of see where they're thinking of putting things, so we can kind of collaborate with them and go over some of our ideas. So what I'd like to do at the council meeting, you have the resolution, and just put together some of your ideas of what things that you would like to see, that if we sent this to council and said, we're giving you a favorable recommendation with these, we would like to see these additions or subtractions.
Roxanne, you can't say it that way.
Okay.
It has to be unfavorable unless they do these changes, because if you say
Okay.
favorable, then
All right.
you're doing favorable on what they've submitted.
Okay, thank you.
And do
So
you want to go through the resolution now, like sort of break it down as we're talking about it, the different zoning types, et cetera? I mean, I'm not sure what you want to do. If you want to start on page 1 of the introduction of the joint annexation dated 8/3/2020.
Well, I think the things that we're concerned about is it does not state in here where the different things are where they're proposing to put the parkland.
But it does show on the annexation.
There's a plat.
It does not.
Tom said there was a document that must be attached to this, an addendum or something that does actually lay out what lot A, lot B, and what is going to be on each one.
It's the PowerPoint that I forwarded to both you, to everybody. So in the PowerPoint, it actually shows that.
The only thing we have in here is the Exhibit C, which shows that.
I emailed you the PowerPoint this morning.
Yeah.
It's also on the website.
But the PowerPoint isn't part of the agreement. It's just an explanation.
Yeah, but it shows you the
So-
map of where the parcels are that are being designated to.
Well, it has it in the resolution. It's Exhibit C.
C.
That's-
Exhibit C, it says office park, and that's the front, and then parcel B is where it
There you
doesn't
go, I'm
say what
sorry.
it's for, but that's where the parkland would be.
Parcel B is the parkland, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So, if there was some, I don't know how they could divide that up, because I know this comes in as 2 parcels, right? Or
Three
they've
parcels.
combined the 3 parcels together to make this one.
Well, there's actually 5 parcels, right? Because there's
Yeah.
so yeah, there's 5.
Okay.
No, wait,
Oh, I
there's
see.
3. There's 3 because there's a parcel that's currently owned by the IDA that's in the town limits, zoned R2, which is that wooded area right along 27.
Oh, okay. I
that
wondered
That
little
about
piece
that.
there, that
triangle?
one piece, it's like right there. That's like you're like, why is this wooded?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
actually owned by the IDA and part of this annexation. Well, it's already annexed, but it's owned by the IDA.
Okay.
They currently own that little triangle on the other side of 27, which is R2.
Okay. Okay.
And then we
Okay.
have a large parcel that's behind the Bottler Road residences.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
that parcel goes, is a sort of a polygon. Then you have one that's right near Leishear Road. There's a parcel. And then there's another parcel that's divided by the electrical lines. That's the larger portion at the back where the Parkland Parcel B was supposed to be previously located possibly. And so that's a whole parcel itself. So again, you have 4 parcels total. 1 already is in the town, owned by the IDA. And the 3 others are what we're looking at and annexing into the town. If that explains any more.
Okay.
Yeah, like Exhibit C, that little triangle place of trees,
Mhm.
that currently is in the town limits.
All right.
So it should be really excluded from this Exhibit C.
It should be.
Yeah.
So we're kind of looking at kind of maneuvering, I think parcel A and B kind of changing a little bit. But then
Parcel A is actually for future.
Yeah.
That's kind of like in reserve.
Yeah, it's a reserve.
so
Is it possible to bring parcel B south?
Yeah, B and Office Park switch, basically.
Yeah.
well, a portion of the office park and the B switch.
Well, again, so if you look at Exhibit C, so in Parcel B and Exhibit C, if you look at all that wooded area, that's probably all low-lying area where there's a stream or multiple
Mhm.
streams, because farmers farm the land. So that
Sure.
farmer was using as much land as he could maximize without getting his tractor stuck.
Mhm.
So all those woods down there in Parcel B are all wetlands. I'm sure there's a head of a stream up towards Parcel A, or that's where the drainage ditch
Mhm.
is for all of Parcel A comes down through Parcel B to get into whatever stream is that's down there.
Right, so we
So-
might actually want to keep that as parkland.
Well,
Maybe.
again, there's a buffer
Maybe.
that's required. I mean, you have to have 100-foot buffer from any wetlands. So, I mean, all that's going to be
Mhm. Mhm.
taken out. So again,
Mhm.
trying to move the parkland down to there, I mean, it's a great thought. I'm not sure how feasible it's going to be.
Well, I
But again,
do-
I'm not a land engineer. I just, do this every day. So,
No,
I
I hear you. I just think that also my understanding is like we're in the office park property, they're only looking at putting the office park right where like the number 3 is.
okay.
And then the hashtag number 3, that green piece right there, that's where they're talking about building it because they're running into where the dirt is and everything. And up that way, there is too much wetlands and there's some other issues up that way. So my understanding is that they were talking about just putting it in that one spot right where surrounded by the dirt
Mhm.
with the number 3s.
And I
So-
could see where they would
Lower
not,
end of it.
like, I could see where, again, you can look at, this is a great representation. So again, the terrain or the wetlands, like where 3 and 3 are,
Yep.
my gut tells me that that's actually low lying as well, possibly.
It is to the
possibly
north of it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, where the
Yep.
3 and number 3 are.
Yep.
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 I feel like, because again, you look at it, it's brown, it's not green, it's not been
Yep.
tilled, it's not been worked. So that leads me to believe that that land is questionable for
It's low
any
lying.
kind of construction. Now they can build on anything. I mean, go to Ocean City, you'll see. I mean, they can backfill and do stormwater management to support any kind of construction. But it comes down to cost, construction cost to dollars earned. You know, is it feasibly or economically viable to develop that portion of land? And again, they've just put a big swale in not too long ago. If you remember, they were doing
Right.
construction down there. And if you think, that's kind of in the middle of that green patch, right below the 2 number 3s. It's kind of in the
Right.
middle there.
Yeah, because that they were having issues with water coming into the houses on Butler Road,
Correct.
right?
So yeah, so I'm not sure if that's going to stay as an integral part of the redevelopment of these parcels. I don't know. You know, that might be phase 1 towards their stormwater management in the future. I'm thinking that's the impression I got from Carroll County. Not that they said that verbally, but that's kind of what they were alluding to at the Water Resource Commission council meeting. So anyway, I mean, we would have to look to see if parkland or, you know, would even be viable behind the Butler Road residents. I mean,
And that's just one option, is to look at switching. It's another option to look at what can be included in Office Park. If there's
Yep.
other zoning options that could be used instead of Office Park that might be viable for everybody.
Yep.
You know, I think there's some, it would be worthy of a discussion with them to kind of look at
Yes.
some other options.
Yes.
And a third option would be to guarantee or keep whole the wells, the residential wells just outside of the property in case they became affected.
and
Yeah.
my
Well, yeah.
understanding is that they are in discussions with
working on
trying
that.
to figure out some kind of an agreement with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But
I
I don't
think
know
those are the 3 things.
yeah, I don't know.
Hey, Judy, hey, Roxanne, am I allowed to speak?
Sure, Carl.
Okay, thank you. When this round of talks began, I mentioned what Judy just mentioned, the OPE and changes and everything, and they said they were fine with it. They were fine with the uses that were in the designated OPE, because I was thinking the same thing you all were, that what John has said and what Roxanne has said, that changes have, you know, those type of parks aren't in heavy use now. Is the use is what's in the OPE goods for them? And they said, yeah, it was. So I'm not sure if we'll get anything by reopening the zoning just yet.
I know, because Frank was talking about hotels and
Hotels and-
hospitals.
Yeah, I know this is not our table, so I'll be quiet on the hotel and that stuff right now. But they said they were all good with what was in there. So
I
But
guess
do we-
I'm looking to see if we can expand it beyond what's in there.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
okay, I mentioned that too, but they said it was good.
Yeah, I think they wrote what's in there.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just saying what I mentioned.
yep,
We did,
Well-
we did, as the town before me, we did accept what they wrote, right? So
Yes.
you guys did, or planning commission did allow it to come through as it was. And to change it as they're going through the process seems not quite kosher. But
So I have to agree with John. I completely disagree with that. It's sort of this, we'll write it as long as it, I don't know, benefits us, but the minute it doesn't, we're gonna rewrite it to make it not possible for you. So I have to agree with John.
well, it sounds.
I was not talking about rewriting the ordinance. I was talking about adjusting the annexation agreement, but not amending the ordinance. So,
Right.
well, I think that's what we could do,
Yes.
going back with a non-favorable recommendation, except for if these items were to be changed, then we're okay with it. The thing is if we submit it back to them and they give us what we're asking for, then, then ultimately, then that's, so we have to be really careful in what we're asking for. Or we also have to be willing to compromise. It might be that we might be asking for this and we only get, 75% of that or something. I mean, and ultimately the town council could still annex it in, even if we give them a non-favorable recommendation.
Yes, that's right.
Just
They
as
can.
the county commissioners could take parcel 20 and turn it into employment campus through the county, just because planning gave it a non-favorable recommendation doesn't mean they can't annex it in or change the zoning.
They could, but they don't have any infrastructure.
Correct, and that I mentioned that in the letter.
Yeah.
And back to your initial statement, what I think from my understanding is because the annexations, the future land use was OPE, that's why when, that's why then the owner of that parcel 20 was like, well, mine's abutting this future land use of OPE. Well, there's this new zone EC, which is very similar, maybe a bit heavier use. Maybe I could go ahead and rezone my property. I think that's how that all started. Is my gut feeling, but I'm not positive.
Well, yeah, I mean, remember last meeting, I asked the Carroll County staff person whether the owner of parcel 20 thought they were going to be getting the water from Harrison Leishear. And she was like, oh, I don't really know what they think.
Yeah, she wouldn't know.
Right, but yeah, I mean,
she's been a great help as well.
Oh yeah, she's great. But I mean, I'm sure that's what they're thinking, because it's like they don't have any access to.
Well, we don't know what kind of water they have on site there. I mean, we don't have any of the well testing they've done on that parcel 20.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, I mean, the county themselves have said they don't have infrastructure. I mean, Linda Eisenberg said that.
Yeah.
They don't have any wastewater.
Yeah.
Or that.
No, that's the worst issue for them.
One of the things that I see in the OPE allowances is a computing and data center. Honestly, I think that these days that would be the most profitable benefit. See, this is part of the thing about taking an annexation of it, is that we can actually keep the zoning. We can go with that OPE zoning, and we can actually look to see if we can put computer data centers there, because Mount Airy is actually perfectly primed for, having access to Frederick, and we're right in the middle of Frederick and Baltimore and DC. It's perfect for computing, like internet traffic and data centers. It wouldn't bother anybody. They're low profile buildings that have very few people going in and out of them. And they would love the water because the cooling that would be there. I'm just saying,
they don't have any windows.
These are the things. Yeah, I mean, these are the things that it could be a highly profitable thing to the town with very low people impact of footprint on those properties. But you only can explore that if it's yours. Can't put that in someone else's yard. So
Right. But the town would own the property, but the developer, well, we wouldn't own the property. It would just be in our jurisdiction.
yeah, but you gotta have a second. So
right. So the owner would still get to develop, based on what's in the OP. Obviously, the site plan, we would have some control over it, but we can't say, oh, you have to create computer data centers.
No, but I'm saying that.
I mean, I agree. It would be a good idea, and I would like to be able to say, yes, let's do that.
Right. Well, those are the things it could be. I mean, Frank scared everybody with hotels and hospitals, but it could be a very profitable.
He piled it on, didn't he? It's also light industrial is, permitted, and
It doesn't necessarily just have to be office space. We know that. I mean, that's in it.
Yeah.
So so we have a half an hour left.
It's not required that we stay,
though. It's not. That's what I'm getting ready to say. So I just think that.
I see Martina's here. Did you want to let her talk at all? I know.
Well, yeah. I mean, she hasn't said anything.
Yeah, I see she's on. So I just
Martina, do you have any comments?
Not at this time. I'm trying to listen to everything and take everything in. And I really like the idea of all parties getting together and having an open discussion, as long as there's, here's our list and here's this person's list. And, as long as there's a clear agenda, so that we don't go off on different tangents and what if this and what if that, and say, these are our concerns. And if this, then here's our recommendation. I like that idea a lot.
Roxanne,
Okay.
I have a procedural question
Yes.
about the extension.
Uh-huh.
So if you make that request at the next council meeting, will the 120 days start then? Or will it still start at the end of whatever our allotted time is? And if so, do we want to wait until we've sort of used up our time and then ask? And I don't know the answer to that, but something to.
Well, Tom would have to answer that question. My concern is, say they don't pass that resolution or that ordinance. So
right,
we
then
can
in
still ask for an
October,
extension. We can still
October
ask for an
90
extension.
days.
It would start on the 121st day.
Well, that
that
was
we would
my
have.
question. That was
Yeah, I
my
would think
question.
that's when it would start. It wouldn't start when we did the request. It would start at the end of that cycle.
Yeah, with the
But
end
But
of
Tom
the
would
first
have to answer
cycle.
that question,
Right.
but that would be what I would think. would
Like
be
if
the-
you renew your library books early, even if they're not yet due, they just give you the 3 weeks from the date you renew. They don't give you that, So
hear what
it
you're
was
saying.
just a question. And
I hear what you're saying, but
I
that
don't
would,
know the answer.
I mean, and that would be a Tom question, so we can
Yeah.
see what the answer is to that. Again, he did say that it's retroactive because it's a zoning item.
Yeah, I'm not
It's an
talking about,
ordinance.
I'm not talking about
But-
whether we get the extension. Whether we get that. I'm just talking about if we request what we are already entitled to, which is this 120 day.
Well, when we make the request, we can make it requesting the extension from the date of, we'll make it
When it
retroactive from that
expires.
date, the 21st date, or 121st date,
Right, okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
That's probably work.
I will do that at the next council meeting. So what I'd like to do at the next planning commission meeting is just do a brief overview of what we've talked about here at the workshop. Take some time again and look through the resolution and come up with what recommendations you would have that you would like to see in the resolution. And then, John, come up with some days, preferably early in November, the first or
Okay.
second week in November,
Okay,
where we can have another workshop with
Okay.
IDA as
Yeah.
part of the panel.
okay, and I'll try to get IDA as part of the panelists.
Yeah, and we'd like to see that rough site plan at that time, if that's possible.
Yep, as soon as we get something, I'll forward that out to you guys for, again, it's not really a review, it's more of just an
No.
overview. November workshop dates.
Is that agreeable with everybody?
Yeah.
Any other, we can't talk about anything else other than the Harrison Leishear, so seeing none, do I hear a motion to
Motion to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand. Aye?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, adjourned. I'll see
All right.
you, we'll see you on the, is it the 26th, our next meeting?
26th.
Okay,
And this won't
Okay.
be on the agenda.
What'd you say?
what did you say this?
Did you say
This
what?
won't be on the agenda, right? Or do you want to have this on the agenda to?
No, we want.
We do.
We do.
Okay, okay.
She
Okay,
just-
that's,
She just gave us homework.
Yeah.
okay, awesome. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right,
great.
thanks.
Thank you all for your time.
All right,
Okay.
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you.